Hello everybody and welcome back to Typical City. Lucas Paqueta is still on the radar of Manchester City, still a potential target. Now whether we go in for him in January or wait until the summer of 2024 remains to be seen. A player that is definitely going to fill a big gap in the midfield. I know a lot of City fans right now are complaining about the lack of creativity in the squad. Could Lucas Paqueta be the answer to our lack of creativity? I'm not convinced he will entirely be the answer, but he certainly would be a welcome addition. Now the two reports are conflicting. One's from the Real Tolmy's Hairdo on Twitter. He's suggesting on his Twitter account that, and he's a reliable source as well, more than reliable, he has proved himself time and time again to be right. He does have a source within the club, which could bode well. He's got the odd one wrong, don't get me wrong, but still, the majority of what he said has come true. So it is worth following his Twitter account if you don't already. Go and follow it. And he's suggesting that the move is going to happen in January, and City is still waiting to find out about the betting allegations. Now, the other source is Martin Blackburn of The Sun. He's suggesting City are willing to wait until 2024. Might not be ideal. City are clearly in for this player. They showed big interest during the summer, and obviously the betting allegations is what caused that deal to fall through. Now, whether those betting allegations are going to be proven to not be true, because he's protesting his innocence, consistently protesting his innocence. He has now gone into a few interviews with the FA. There's no news on the outcome of that interview. But there is some suspicions of the other side of things. There's some suspicious accusations, if anything, because these accusations have come from one source, one betting firm has claimed that Lucas Paqueta has breached betting allegations, or at least raised the suspicions of these particular bets, where it was an influx of money being placed on Paqueta to being given a yellow card during a game against Aston Villa. Now, apparently those bets were traced back to Paqueta Island, of all places. Those of you who don't know that Lucas Paqueta comes from an island called Paqueta, and obviously must have family or friends there. But what got me was the fact that the only source was from Betway. It was Betway who claimed that these bets were suspicious. Betway who sponsor West Ham. Betway who don't want to see West Ham's best players being sold in the summer. You know, you start to think, people, I mean, I might have my tinfoil hat on, being a bit of a conspiracy theorist here, maybe, but bigger companies have done more corrupt things than that in the sport of football that we all love. There's plenty of dodgy dealings going on behind closed doors that we're obviously not privy to, but it does seem a little bit odd. Pep Guardiola's hug is a huge giveaway to the relationship and the conversations that went on between Manchester City and Lucas Paqueta. Almost like disappointment from Paqueta, like so gutted that he's not part of the Manchester City squad anymore, and really visibly disappointed. And Pep Guardiola was visibly telling him, don't worry, it'll all work itself out. When? We don't know. Could it even get worked out? Because, I mean, this isn't the same as Ivan Toney's situation, because Ivan Toney admitted guilt. He openly admitted that he's a gambling addict, where Lucas Paqueta has zero history of gambling addiction. Now, you're trying to prove Lucas Paqueta's family here. You're not trying to prove Lucas Paqueta has been, maybe he's tipped them off, but then you need to find the correspondence between Lucas Paqueta and his family or friends that placed the bets to prove that he said, I'm going to get booked in this game, and you need to put money on for that particular game. You need to prove that. That's going to be near impossible. You know, I mean, what are the stipulations? What are they allowed? What is their jurisdiction? How far are they allowed to investigate this situation? Going in people's messages? Is it allowed to go that far? Investigating emails and text messages and phone calls and things like that? Because it seems a bit excessive, really. But we'll have to wait and see. And because if they can't prove it, then surely the move will be allowed to go ahead, whether that happens in January or not. The question is, in January now, Lucas Paqueta's value's almost gone up, because he's started to play even better football this year. Whether he's got the bit between his teeth trying to prove himself, put himself in the shop window for Manchester City, we have to wait and see. But he's certainly improved. He seems a better player than he did last season. His statistics are on a trajectory for beating last season's, and I'm going to show you his particular statistics for this season and last season in a minute. But I think there's a player there. Now, the Real Tolmy is suggesting that Calvin Phillips could be potentially part of the deal. Whether it could be a 50 million plus Calvin Phillips, again, I'm not convinced at that, because when you start talking about swaps, or including players as part of the deal involving swaps, then you can't just throw a player in without looking at the current setup of where that particular player might go to West Ham, for example. So if you look at West Ham, they've got Edson Alvarez, who is holding down that central defensive midfielder on his own, you know, as in he's a standout performer. He's settled in incredibly well. They do tend to play a double pivot, so then you're saying, oh, well, maybe Calvin Phillips could play alongside Edson Alvarez, and it makes sense for West Ham to still be interested in in Calvin Phillips, sorry. But that then begs the question of what to do with James Ward-Prowse, who's been playing alongside Edson Alvarez, as well as Thomas Souček, who's been playing alongside Edson Alvarez. So you question the need for Calvin Phillips at West Ham. That's my start, because Calvin Phillips could be going from the bench of Manchester City to the bench of West Ham. I mean, if I'm Calvin Phillips, I'm saying no thank you. I'd rather sit at the bench of Manchester City. At least I'm picking up trophies and medals and big ones in the process, you know. So if he's promised playing time under David Moyes, that's a different conversation. If he's promised that, then fair play. I hope he gets his move, Calvin Phillips, and gets a move where he does get to play, because he's not playing anywhere near enough at Manchester City. But that's enough about Calvin Phillips. Whether that gets involved in the deal, I don't know. You'll have to wait and see for that one. But the 85 million price tag for Paqueta, that is going to have to go higher in January, because that's his release clause of summer 2024. So if we were to wait until summer 2024, we know that the price tag is going to be 85 million. In January, you're probably looking at 95 million, because they're going to want an extra bit of chunk of change because of the time difference and the fact that we're taking one of their best players in the middle of the season. So January, I would love it to happen. I have my doubts. I have my doubts about how quickly these betting allegations could actually be rectified and find some sort of solution to this situation, because it's not ideal for either the club or the player, to be honest. But I'm just going to pull up his stats for you quickly to look at last season, to give you a reminder of what he did last season as well as this season coming up. So last season's attacking stats, with 41 appearances, 2,965 minutes, 5 goals, 7 assists to his name, which isn't bad at all. And I'm going to show you his heat maps in a minute from this season to last season, because he has a different role at West Ham, last season compared to this season. He seems to be playing a much more fluid role last season in terms of, in an attacking sense. He's got more responsibility on the left-hand side of the pitch, and I'll show you exactly why in a minute. But 1.2 key passes and 1.2 dribbles per game as well for last season in the attacking sense. Defensively, again, the only reason I'm interested in defensive side of things, because he has played defensive midfield for West Ham. Could he play defensive midfield in case we lose Rodri again? Could he be a player that fills that void as a player, because he's got the physicality and tackling? His numbers per game suggest to me that he can. You know, I remember seeing him against City. Phil Foden got bodied by Lucas Paqueta. I remember that game. And Paqueta was a physical presence against City. So you know he can do it. Could he do it in defensive midfield in Rodri's absence? I think he could. 2.5 tackles per game, 0 errors leading to a shot or a goal, 0.6 interceptions per game, and 1.5 clearances per game. This current season, you're seeing a little change. The trajectory of goals and assists is still on course for 2 goals and 1 assist in 888 minutes, and that's in 10 appearances. 1.3 key passes per game again. A lot more dribbles. 2.5, and that's because of his position. His new role at West Ham seems to have a lot more creativity involved. Defensively, he's got 1.4 tackles per game, 0 errors, 1.1 interceptions and 1.1 clearances per game. Now there's his heat map for last season. Everywhere. There's his versatility, and probably why Manchester City are interested in a player that covers the midfield area of the pitch quite like that. That's pretty impressive. You know, really versatile. Now, this season at West Ham, very much on the left-hand side of the pitch, tucking inside here and there, but almost on the defensive side of it a little bit. So you've seen him drift into the defensive midfield role, collecting the ball from the back four, and that's why his dribbles per game is a lot higher this season than it was last season. What his particular role at West Ham is now probably has very little impact on what his role could be at Manchester City, because Pep Guardiola normally signs players and gives them a new lease of life, a completely fresh canvas of tactics and roles to play out within a Manchester City squad. So the fact that he's playing left wing for West Ham, does not mean he's going to come in and play left wing for Manchester City at all. I imagine he's probably going to go back to being quite a central player for City if we were to sign him. But Blues What do you think about this for January? Do you think it's possible? Would you include Calvin Phillips in the deal? And how far do you think we have to go? Or would you rather just wait to see City get him in summer? And if that's the case, would you see someone else? Because a year's gone by in that time. Is there someone else that's sprung into your mind and someone that could potentially be a better alternative to Lucas Paqueta? Personally, I hope we go for him in January, whether that's involved in Calvin Phillips or not. I want to see someone coming like this in to the club in January, because I think it would be a huge boost to the squad going into that second half of the season, and hopefully the betting allegations can be sorted by then. That's the main stumbling block. Whether it's quick enough to be resolved by January, probably not, but we'll have to wait and see. Get your comments in below, Blues. I want to hear them. Like and subscribe. Typical City is the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.
This is Typical City now, holding up silver.